Summer is steaming back into Hampton roads tomorrow.
The cooler weather we've had over the past few days will be replaced by heat and humidity. Jeff is here with the details.
Yeah, we're going to start off a little bit on the cool side with a lot of humidity as well. In fact, right now, look at all the humidity out there. You can see the reduced visibilities, the low clouds, a little bit of fog out there. We've had a little bit of light rain off and on throughout the evening, came in sort of late afternoon. And again, out there right now, we're basically looking at just some clouds, temperature of 70 degrees, no wind, but the dew point is 70. So the humidity as high as it gets right now, 100%. That's why we're seeing a little bit of that fog out there. For this evening, we started off with cloudy skies and a 72-degree temperature. Still going to hold around 70, then down to 69 later tonight. But this is where things really change. When we get into tomorrow, we're going to see those temperatures really shifting because of the wind. Notice the wind southeasterly 5 o'clock in the morning, and then southwesterly by 11 o'clock, just before the lunch hour. So the morning will be very warm. By lunchtime, already up to 80. And then during the afternoon, we're going to continue to rise up upper 80s. That'll feel like mid 90s. I'll talk about how long that lasts and if it leads to any thunderstorms when I return.
Primary day in Virginia, the 2nd District congressional race now setting up to be a marquee matchup this fall. Tonight, Elaine Luria with a decisive victory over Karen Mallard. Luria picking up 62% of the vote to Mallard's 38%. That means Luria, a Naval Academy grad and former Navy commander, will face Congressman Scott Taylor in November. Taylor, a former Navy SEAL, winning easily tonight in his primary matchup against Mary Jones. Taylor with 76% of the vote. 13 News Now reporter Jacqueline Lee was live at Luria's victory party. And Jacqueline, two candidates with strong military backgrounds in a military district.
Yes, and that is what should make this race so interesting to watch. The Democrats need to pick up 24 seats in order to gain control of the House. Tonight, local voters decided that Elaine Luria is the best shot at beating incumbent Scott Taylor.
Thank you to all of you.
Elaine Luria thanking her supporters as she now moves to the fall and a matchup with Congressman Scott Taylor.
I'm feeling great about the energy we have moving into November.
Scott Taylor thankful for the support he received as well.
Fantastic. Look, I'm humbled that the voters again put their confidence in me.
The race is now a battle between veterans in the 2nd District. Both candidates uniquely positioned to represent a district where the military is the backbone of the region. With a fresh agreement with North Korea on potential denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and concessions by President Trump to end war games in South Korea, we pressed both candidates on whether that's a risk to military readiness. Taylor said he supports concessions that lead to peace and stability.
If it means pausing the war games to show a good faith gesture, which of course the North Koreans have as well, when you have hostages back, when you have a site shut down for nuclear, the nuclear testing site shut down, when missile tests have stopped, they've also done concessions as well. So I think that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Luria, a former surface warfare officer, telling us she puts a high priority on military readiness.
I understand the importance of maintaining that level of readiness, maintaining that training, and actually being there to support our allies in Japan and South Korea. So I think that maintaining that readiness is essential.
Leading into November, both candidates said they feel their backgrounds and determination to represent the voters will lead them to victory. And 13 News Now political analyst Quentin Kidd told me earlier today that in order for Democrats to win the race in November, they have to tie Scott Taylor to President Trump's actions, and they have to really energize that Democratic base. But the election is a few months away. Live in Virginia Beach, Jacqueline Lee, 13 News Now.
There were a total of 5 contests in Hampton Roads today. In the Republican primary for U.S. Senate, Corey Stewart edged out a win over Nick Freitas with 45% of the vote. E.W. Jackson trailing in 3rd. Stewart will take on Senator Tim Kaine in the fall. And the Democratic primary in the 1st congressional race, Vanjie Williams won with 40% over Edwin Santana Jr. and John Sardarth. Williams will challenge incumbent Republican Rob Whitman in November.
Republicans also had a primary in the 4th congressional district. Ryan McAdams won easily with 73% of the vote over Sean Fenty. McAdams will move on to face off against Democrat Donald McEachin in the fall.
You can find the results on our website and also on 13 News Now. The app. Stay with us as we continue to follow developments in these races leading up to Election Day in November. So much at stake in our current political climate.
Tonight, former President George H.W. Bush is celebrating his birthday. He's the first U.S. president to turn 94. He spent the day relaxing in Kennebunkport, Maine. Mr. Bush was released from a hospital just 8 days ago where he was treated for low blood pressure. His wife, Barbara, of course, passed away back in April. She would have turned 93 last Friday. We're told several of their children are celebrating the day with their father, including former President George W. Bush.
President Trump is calling his meeting with Kim Jong-un a success. He tweeted, "There is no limit to what North Korea can achieve when it gives up its nuclear weapons." ABC's Serena Marshall has more on the agreements between the two leaders.
With a wave and a fist pump, the president heading back to D.C., confident his gamble and deal-making with North Korea will pay off. Telling ABC's George Stephanopoulos exclusively,
"I've done a lot of deals with a lot of people. We're starting from a very good relationship. This has been a very big day in terms of the world."
The deal they struck, President Trump promising security guarantees as Kim declared his unwavering commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, but missing any mention of timing or verification. The president saying that'd come later, even though he promised the U.S. would cease all military exercises with South Korea.
"We will be stopping the war games."
That promise, a surprise to South Korea. Their defense ministry said there was a need to discern the exact meaning and intent of President Trump's comments. When asked about the concessions, Mr. Trump wouldn't get into specifics, but did say
He's going to be happy. His country does love him. His people, you see the fervor.
Kim is a brutal dictator. He runs a police state. Forced starvation, labor camps. He's assassinating members of his own family. How do you trust a killer like that?
George, I'm given what I'm given, okay? I mean, I think he wants to denuke. It's very important. Without that, there's nothing to discuss.
On Capitol Hill, cautious optimism.
There's nothing in the history of Kim Jong-un or his father or his grandfather that would lead us to be optimistic. Nonetheless, we have to try.
Serena Marshall, ABC News, Washington.
Today was graduation for Bayside High School in Virginia Beach. The ceremony taking place just days after two people, not Bayside students, allegedly tried to attack the school's prom over the weekend. Police said they foiled an attack at the Westin Hotel in Town Center where the Bayside prom was held. They arrested 18-year-old Michael Coleman and a 17-year-old whose name was not released. Officers found the 17-year-old in a room at the Westin with guns. The teens are facing charges related to planning a terrorist attack.
It's kind of scary that I was in that building there, and knowing someone was there with a weapon was pretty insane.
Coleman is currently in Norfolk jail facing unrelated felony charges for attempted malicious wounding and the use of a firearm to commit a felony. Norfolk police say a day before the prom, Coleman was involved in a shooting on Azalea Garden Road. He is being held tonight without bond.
A retired soldier pleads guilty to receiving and selling stolen government property. According to court documents, Francis Edward Roach resold items that were initially delivered to Fort Eustis. He did this through a repair shop he owned in Newport News, A&E Automotive Repair in Denby. The property was part of a larger fraud scheme committed by civilian employees of the DoD who were also retired soldiers. Roach faces up to 10 years in prison when sentenced in October. The off-duty FBI agent who accidentally shot someone while dancing at a nightclub has been charged with second-degree assault. 29-year-old Chase Bishop turned himself in to the Denver Sheriff's Department today. Police say a gun fell from Bishop's waistband as he was dancing earlier this month. Then the gun went off when he picked it up, hitting a man in the leg. Additional charges could be filed depending on the results of toxicology testing.
Search tonight for a missing woman from New Kent County. The sheriff's office says 31-year-old Heather Barboza was headed to a doctor's appointment in Newport News yesterday, and no one has heard from her since then. She was last seen driving a blue 2005 Hyundai Santa Fe with Virginia tags. Anyone who has seen her or knows where she might be should call the police.